This video contains spoilers for Act 1 and 2 of Silksong. What do you think is the best feature that Silksong brought to the Hollow Knight formula? I would have to say crests. I didn't know about crests when I started playing, and the first time I discovered one, I could not believe what I was seeing. Allowing the player to alter his fundamental moveset is such a creative way to add depth to both the combat and the customization of this already brilliant franchise. But the very fact that crests are such a wonderful idea makes their current implementation in Silksong all the more disheartening. Crests are a spectacular concept, but in my opinion, Team Cherry have yet been able to give each one the polish it deserves. Averaging across all crests that are currently in the game, I think crests offer a worse and less responsive playstyle than the original Hollow Knight's moveset. It's one of my biggest issues with Silksong, a game I want so badly to top its predecessor. But I also don't think it has to be that way. As such, over the course of a series of videos, I will be analyzing and suggesting improvements to every crest in Silksong. Although I would like for each crest to be approximately equally powerful, that is not the primary goal of this series. The primary goal is to make each crest feel good to use. To promote the unique qualities of each while never deviating from what made the first game's movement and combat feel so impressively fluid, intuitive, and responsive. There will be the occasional viewer strongly opposed to any changes to Silksong proposed by someone who's not Team Cherry. I understand the impulse, but it simply isn't true to say that only the developer understands how to improve their game. As always, I'm looking to challenge your view, not affirm it, and if you don't want that, I'm not sure you're going to enjoy this video. Also, before anyone feels compelled to write a comment saying if you don't like a crest, just don't use it, that is not actually an argument. I don't want every crest in the game to be the same, of course that would ruin the entire purpose of the system, but I do want every crest to be the best version of itself. And that will be the goal of this series. Again, it must be emphasized that I deeply admire the crest system. I consider it nothing short of a work of game design genius. But that does not mean it lives up to its full potential. This is a passionate issue for me, and I hope you'll find my suggested reworks, if not entirely agreeable, interesting nonetheless. First, I have to tell you what I think makes for a good crest. Having spent a lot of time contemplating this, I've narrowed it down to 4 aspects. A crest is well designed to the degree that it's 1. Non-invasive. The crest should almost never take control away from the player. This includes locking him into an animation, delaying his input, or ignoring it entirely. Why? Being allowed to make decisions is what makes a game like Silksong fun. The game should listen to your input. This is about fighting the enemies, not the controls. 2. Intuitive. The crest should be easy to learn, hard to master. Why? I believe the game is most fun when you understand what's going on. A crest is your basic moveset. It should feel natural to use at any skill level. 3. Compelling. The crest should be mechanically and thematically interesting. 4. Evergreen. The crest may have its strengths and weaknesses, but should at least be comfortable to use in every major aspect of the game, be that arenas, boss fights, platforming, exploration, or tool customization. Why? Completely excluding a crest from being useful in one part of the game is unfair to that crest and hurts player choice. It's also a terrible way to incentivize players to try out a crest they don't normally use. In other words, a good crest is a nice crest. With all of that out of the way, I'm Holland, and these are the Silksong crests improved. Chapter 1. Hunter. Hunter is the starting crest, and as such, its moveset is on the simpler side. The neutral slashes are instantaneous and boast a comfortably sized hitbox, making them a pleasure to use in combat. The Sprint Slash is likewise pretty straightforward and feels good to use, however, it has a minor delay between input and execution, which does make it feel slightly unresponsive. If the idea was to make the attack feel impactful, then that's fully understandable, but I remain skeptical as to whether this handicap actually achieves its goal. What I think makes the attack feel impactful is the acrobatic spectacle Hornet does at the end. It's not the wind-up. Perhaps I'm wrong and the startup delay is an overall benefit, but if not, I would suggest removing it in favor of more fluidity. As for the needle strike, I like it, although I struggle to understand why the second slash needs to push you backwards, sometimes out of reach of the enemy you're trying to hit. Seems to me like it might have been better served just keeping you in place. Overall, the neutral slash, sprint slash, and needle strike are all very well designed. The down slash is where we get to the crux of my only big criticism of Hunter. I think that pogos are sacred. They have to feel good to use no matter the crest, because not only are they important for combat, they're a crucial part of your movement kit. Having the down slash extend vertically in the original Hollow Knight was a really smart decision on the developer's part. Doing it this way is both highly intuitive and maximally freeing because you don't need any horizontal leeway to execute the move. That is not to say you can't experiment with making a different type of pogo, it's only to emphasize that I think you should be very careful when doing so. That's because you're liable to change things that worked perfectly in the first game without necessarily understanding why they worked so well. And if you try to change something great that you don't fully understand, the chance of you making it better rather than worse, as they say, the road to bad game design is paved with good intentions. In regard to the pogo, Hunter tries something bold, and I think it mostly succeeds. However, it has one flaw that holds it back from feeling truly polished, and that was the decision to not make the pogo trigger as soon as the button is pressed. From what I've been able to count, this wind-up period is only approximately 6 frames long, but on a pogo, 6 frames are absolutely noticeable. The result is a downslash that always feels like it's lagging behind ever so slightly. Often you'll tell the game you want to pogo, watch the animation begin, only to then take damage anyway. It feels like you responded correctly, but were punished nonetheless. This is a comparison between Hunter, Wanderer, and the first game's downslashes. On regular speed, and even when slowed down by half, it's hard to notice any significant difference between the three. But if we slow the footage down to 10%, it becomes crystal clear. The Wanderer and Hollow Knight pogos sit at a near instant 2 frames, while Hunter lags way behind at 6 frames. For reference, the discrepancy between casting Desolate Dive standing versus jumping first is around 1 to 2 frames, and that's on an ability that already locks you into a lengthy animation. This is 3 to 6 times that delay on a pogo. Silksong is taking a feature that was incredibly well executed in the first Hollow Knight, partly because of its hitbox shape, but mostly, I think, because of its responsiveness, and then removing that responsiveness by adding an artificial wind-up. Again, don't get it twisted, the problem is not the pogo being different, the problem is the pogo being unresponsive. As you'll see later on, Hunter is, by comparison, quite a responsive crest overall, and I don't want to give it any more trouble than it deserves. But it's the principle behind implementing such a delay that I'm questioning. Is that delay before every single pogo adding anything positive to the experience? Or is the reason why so many people like to use Wanderer not because they're nostalgic for the first game or because they don't like change, but simply because they don't have to deal with artificial delays on their inputs? Moving on, Hunter has a standard bind that fits well into the kit. Unlike other crests, Hunter doesn't start with all of its abilities. This was perhaps done to avoid overwhelming the player at the start of the game, as well as to conceal the fact that crests would even be a part of the experience. When evolved by Eva, each nail strike builds focus. At 6 focus, Hornet starts dealing 30% more needle damage. After the second evolution, at 12 focus, this is increased to 50%. That's pretty cool, but here's the problem. Taking damage clears all of your focus, and I think that's a little bit excessive. I would suggest making every hit remove 6 focus instead, regardless of the number of masks taken and whether it was a double hit or not. This has no impact on the first evolution of the crest, since you'll still be losing all of your focus no matter what, but once twice evolved, you'll now be allowed to keep some of your momentum going even after just a singular mistake. The tool system that replaces the old charm system has both upsides and downsides. However, for the time being, that's not important. I'm rebalancing the crests, not the tool system. The only thing I wish to change, where applicable, is to give every crest at least 1 yellow and 1 blue slot, disregarding the Vesti crest. This is to allow every crest at least some degree of customization through blue tools, as well as the quality of life inherent in yellow tools. Each crest having its own slots is fine, it's even interesting, but giving some crests 0 blue or 0 yellow slots is going too far. What's fun about barring beast users from ever combining 2 unique blue tools? And what's fun about witch users not being allowed any quality of life? Not much, I would say. I will get into that more when we get to those crests. With that said, Hunter is one of the 2 perfectly balanced crests in regard to tool slots, boasting 2 of every color. Although not every crest needs to have the same number of slots, this configuration is safe and effective. As such, I don't see any reason to change it. Every crest has its flaws, but some have less than others. If you haven't noticed already, I think Hunter is among the most effectively executed crests in Silksong. It's not the most interesting thematically, but as the starting crest, that might well be a good thing. And gameplay-wise, save for a slightly suboptimal Pogo, it feels both intuitive and responsive to use. I have made 3 minor suggestions. Removing the wind-up period on Sprint Slash, removing the pushback from the needle strike, and making the loss of focus slightly less punishing. But these are indeed minor suggestions. They are not required to make the crest feel great to use. What I think is necessary is to polish up the downslash by removing the input delay, allowing you to instantly enter a pogoable state when giving the command. A pogo is such an important part of combat and movement that any little delay can be felt, and mistakes caused by said delay often feel frustrating and out of your control. Hunter is already a really well-designed crest. All it needs is one simple change.